be acceptable to thee, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. So you would be right in imagining that there was a big competition between Jesus' followers and the followers of John the Baptist. Both were superpowers in those early days of Christianity and those later days of a temple worship in Jerusalem. Both had disciples. Both followed in the same course of history, prophesying, teaching, baptizing, and then having everybody turn on them and losing their lives. So be careful if you're called as a prophet. John is known as the forerunner. He's also known as the bridge between the Old Testament and the New Testament because he was the last of the great prophets. Although we in Christianity are the only one who recognize that he was the last of the great prophets, but that's all right. We get to do what we get to do. But when you look back at this reading that was written from Matthew's Gospel, it becomes clear that there's more going on here. There's a competition between the two groups of disciples, but there's also this comparison with John the Baptist, who was greater than any prophet, anyone, except if you go to heaven, the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. So Jesus is actually playing with this insistence that we people have of comparing other people to us. There's us against them. And if you're in our group, we have the authority that you don't have. Or we have the class that you don't have. Remember high school? There were little cliques. Yes, there's cliques within the church hierarchy also. There's all the little different committees, think that they know about their little area. There's competition between people on all groups, including vestry, including everything we do to help govern ourselves. And out in our secular world, there's the same competition going. Which party you're on, what you do for Christmas, whether you recognize Advent as a season or not, whether you put your Christmas tree up or not, whether you use blue or purple. I've heard a lot about that. Whether if you pick the right hymns. I've heard a lot about that too. But what Jesus is doing is he's turning this kind of comparison that we all do on its head and saying that with the advent of John the Baptist and Jesus coming into the world, we're in the presence of the kingdom of heaven and its new age. In this new age, everything else is toppled on its head. There is no competition. There is no continuity even. The only thing that matters in the kingdom of heaven is whether we are feeding the hungry and giving sight to the blind and giving a helping hand to those who can't afford their rent at the moment. Those who don't feel included, we are in solidarity with them. Those who no one else wants, we go to meet them where they are. And in that way, we are creating the kingdom of heaven alongside Jesus. So our part in Advent is a difficult one, but it's one of advocacy and identity. That if we know that the Christ child has already been born in our hearts, that we carry this precious light of heaven, then we know that we belong one foot in heaven and one foot here, but that our big opportunity here is to share what's in the inside of our hearts, which is gratitude, love, fidelity, awe and wonder, mystery, liturgy, the things that make us resonate, knowing that this is why I am a Christian, that I am able to be part of this family who brings help to the world and creates heaven on earth to match the heaven that is all around us, but we often forget that it's there. One of the things that happens in this reading is that his followers are scratching their head. They don't know what in the world he's talking about. And we often don't know what we're talking about. But as long as we are doing our best to live our version of Christianity and to do as honestly as we can, sharing our faith with those who ask questions, can't share it with somebody who doesn't want to hear it. You tried that? Yeah. But you can share it with those who ask questions and say, this is why I believe. This is why I'm called a Christian. When I grew up in the Episcopal Church, we didn't call ourselves Christians. We were Episcopalians, thank you very much. And what we did was we opened the red doors and expected people who had any class to come. Because we knew we had our acts all together. And take a look around, everybody, look behind. Those days are gone, long gone, and really I say thank God they're gone, because there was a little bit of uppity and frozenness about the attitude of the Episcopal Church. I don't think we can all be really proud of how we used to think about inclusion and solidarity and turning the world upside down. If you're not being challenged by the news, if you're not being challenged in your faith, if you're not being challenged wondering where in the world God is and why God is not doing something, then you really can't call yourself a Christian. We have to struggle. We have to struggle with one another, with our personal relationships, with who's better and who's least, and then realize, oh yeah, we don't do that. The earliest Christians were known for the egalitarian way in which they ran the church. There weren't vestries. There weren't committees. There were deacons. That was the first thing to come out of the early Christian movement, was deacons. And that's the way the church worked for a while. So what are we to make of the lesson today as we prepare for the coming of the Christ child? You can make this out of it, just a suggestion. It's easy to welcome a little baby in a manger that we can all gather around and say, yeah, that's the baby Jesus. But it's hard to look at that Jesus on the cross and know that that's what our destiny is too. That if we do the right thing and put our foot into dangerous ground and stand where no one fears to tread, we will end up being criticized, being mocked, being disowned, and hopefully being true to our nature, which tells us that there are some fights that are worth fighting, and Jesus will lead us in that way. Amen.
Amen.